How I beat the NHS ADHD and autism queue, and you can too. If you've been told to join the NHS waiting list for an ADHD or autism assessment or have been waiting for years, this video is for you. I'm going to show you a legal NHS pathway that almost nobody talks about, that can cut that wait from years down to months. Completely free. No private fees, no thousands of pounds. If you're watching this video, there's a good chance you already know that something is different about the way your mind works. Maybe you've struggled your whole life with focus, or with feeling overwhelmed in social situations. Maybe you've been told you're too sensitive, or not trying hard enough, or just anxious. Maybe you've burned out, completely, totally, and you have no idea why. You've done the research, you've taken the online quizzes, you're pretty sure you might have ADHD or autism, or maybe both, and you've plucked up the courage to speak to your GP. You've joined the waiting list. And then, nothing. Months pass, sometimes years. In some parts of England, people are waiting up to 10 to 15 years for a formal assessment. Let me say that again, 10 to 15 years. According to the most recent NHS data, as of December 2025, over 562,000 people in England have open referrals for a possible ADHD diagnosis, and only about 1 in 10 adults had been on the waiting list for less than 13 weeks. 6 in every 10 adults had been waiting over a year. Without a diagnosis, GPs cannot legally prescribe ADHD medication. Without a diagnosis, many employers and schools won't put support in place. People are suffering in silence, and they don't have to be. Because there is a legal pathway, one that far too few people know about, and one that far too few GPs routinely offer, called NHS Right to Choose. In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what it is, who it's for, whether you qualify, how to find the right provider, step by step how to approach your GP, including what letters to bring, and what to do if your GP refuses. I'll also be honest with you about the current challenges and limitations, because this scheme, while genuinely life-changing for many people, is not without its complications in 2025 and 2026. This is a completely free NHS service. No private fees, no thousands of pounds. Let's get into it. Before we talk about the solution, I want you to truly understand the scale of what we're dealing with. Because if your GP hasn't offered you this pathway, it's not necessarily because they don't care. It's because the system itself is under extraordinary pressure. ADHD is estimated to affect around 2.5 million people in England. Autism affects around 1 in 100 people in the UK, and rates of identification have been rising sharply. Public awareness of both conditions has grown enormously over the last decade, partly through social media, partly through better science, partly through people recognizing themselves in others' stories, and finally having the language to describe their own experience. The result? Referrals have absolutely surged. In March 2025 alone, according to NHS England data, around 20,000 new people were referred for ADHD assessments. That's a 13.5% increase from the same month the previous year. With over 500,000 open referrals in the system and capacity that simply cannot keep pace, the maths do not work. In Leeds, as of early 2024, people at the front of the waiting list had been waiting 3 years, and those newly referred were told to expect even longer. In central and northwest London, the waiting list was so overwhelmed that it had to close entirely. The NHS's own ADHD task force, commissioned by NHS England, reported in 2025 that in some areas waiting times have reached 10 to 15 years. And here is the cost of that wait. When ADHD goes untreated, research suggests it costs the UK economy around £17 billion every single year. People with undiagnosed ADHD are more likely to experience mental health crises, unemployment, relationship breakdown, addiction, and encounters with the criminal justice system. For autistic people, the wait is equally harrowing. Without a formal diagnosis, you can't access autism-specific support at work, at university, or from social services. The Equality Act reasonable adjustments that could transform someone's life sit behind a piece of paper they may have to wait years to receive. This is not a small administrative inconvenience. For many people, it is years of their lives, their careers, their relationships, their mental health, spent waiting for an answer that could explain everything. And the cruel irony is, there is a legal right that many of these people could be using, right now, to cut through that queue entirely. It's called NHS Right to Choose. Right to choose, sometimes called patient choice, is a legal right available to NHS patients in England. It was first introduced in 2014 and extended to mental health services, including neurodevelopmental assessments, from 2018 onwards. In simple terms, if your GP agrees that a referral for an ADHD or autism assessment is clinically appropriate, you have the legal right to choose which NHS-approved provider carries out that assessment, not just your local NHS service, but any provider across England that holds the right NHS contract. This is significant because while your local NHS waiting list might stretch for 3, 5, or even 10 years, some independent providers working within this framework can see you in a matter of months. Right to choose is entirely free at the point of care. The NHS funds it. You pay nothing. Let me be very clear about what right to choose is and what it isn't, because there's a lot of confusion around this. Right to choose, a legal right for NHS patients in England to select their preferred NHS-approved provider for a first assessment for ADHD or autism funded entirely by the NHS. Right to choose, you still need your GP to agree that a referral is appropriate and to make the referral on your behalf. It is also not available if you're already receiving treatment for ADHD or autism. It applies to your first assessment only. Right to choose does not apply if you are currently in prison, detained under the Mental Health Act, in secure accommodation, or serving in the armed forces. To summarize the basic eligibility, you need to be registered with a GP in England. Your GP must agree that a referral for assessment is clinically appropriate. The provider you choose must hold an NHS standard contract. We'll explain how to find those in a moment. You must not already be in active treatment for ADHD or autism. One more important thing. If you are already on a local NHS waiting list and want to switch to a right-to-choose provider, you must be removed from the existing waiting list. You cannot hold places on both at the same time. There is no official national list of approved providers. Instead, providers must hold what's called an NHS standard contract with either NHS England or a local integrated care board or ICB. We'll come back to this when we talk about how to find providers. Right to choose can be used for ADHD assessments, autism assessments, or a combined ADHD and autism assessment. It's available for both adults and children, typically children aged 5 and above, though each provider has its own minimum age and suitability criteria, so always check. It applies across England regardless of which county, city, or borough you live in. The provider you choose doesn't have to be local to you. Many providers now offer assessments online via secure video call, which means geography is far less of a barrier than it once was. However, if a provider requires any in-person appointments, remember that travel is your responsibility, so factor that in when choosing. You might be wondering, how do I know if I have enough of a case for a GP to agree to a referral? Your GP will want to discuss certain things with you when you make this request. They'll likely ask about your symptoms and how they affect your daily life. They'll want to understand your developmental history, what you were like as a child, in school, in social situations. They'll want to check whether your difficulties fit recognized clinical criteria, such as those in the DSM-5 or ICD-11, the International Diagnostic Manuals. And they'll want to be sure there isn't another, more obvious explanation for your difficulties. Don't be put off by this. You don't need to arrive with a formal diagnosis or proof. You need to be able to describe, honestly and clearly, how your symptoms affect your everyday life, your work, your relationships, your ability to manage day-to-day tasks, your mental health. Some providers will ask you to complete a self-report screening tool before your GP appointment. For ADHD, this is often the ASRS, Adult ADHD Self-Report Scale, and for autism, the AQ-10 questionnaire. Completing these and bringing them to your GP appointment can be really helpful in demonstrating that you've thought carefully about this and that your concerns are grounded. Key tip. Some right-to-choose providers have their own suitability criteria. For example, some may not accept referrals for people with certain complex mental health conditions, or may require that assessments take place in person for specific cases. Always check the provider's eligibility criteria on their website before asking your GP to refer you to them. One critical point. Right to choose is for your first assessment. If you've already received a diagnosis for ADHD or autism, whether through NHS or private means, this pathway is not for you. It also cannot be used for medication-only referrals. The provider who assesses you is expected to provide your diagnosis and, if applicable, start your initial treatment pathway, including medication titration. Now let's talk about how to find a provider. This is the part that trips people up most often, because there is no single, central, up-to-date national list of all right-to-choose providers. The landscape changes constantly. Providers come and go, ICBs impose funding limits, and availability varies by region. But here is how to navigate this effectively. Step 1. Check ADHD UK's Right to Choose directory. ADHD UK, the charity, at adhducut.co.uk, has one of the most well-maintained and plain English guides to Right to Choose currently available. They have a 3-step guide, a list of currently active providers, and they keep it updated as the landscape shifts. This is your first port of call. Step 2. Check your local ICB website. ICB stands for Integrated Care Board. These are the regional NHS bodies that manage NHS services in your area. Many ICBs publish their own lists of approved right-to-choose providers for their region, along with any current funding restrictions. Search for your area ICB Right to Choose ADHD Autism and you should find their relevant page. For example, NHS Sussex, NHS South West London, and Humber and North Yorkshire all publish clear guidance pages. Step 3. Go directly to provider websites. Several well-established right-to-choose providers have their own clear information pages, including downloadable letter templates, screening forms, and ICB by ICB availability updates. As of mid-2026, providers with active right-to-choose services across many areas of England include Clinical Partners, clinical-partners.co.uk, Problem Shared, problemshared.net, Psychiatry UK, psychiatry-uk.com, The Retreat Clinics, theretreatclinics.org.uk, The Owl Centre, theowl.org, and Evolve Psychology, evolvepsychology.com. Always check their websites directly as availability changes. Step 4. When you've found a provider you want to use, check 3 things on their website. 1. Do they currently accept referrals from your ICB? Due to funding caps, some providers have had to pause referrals from specific areas. Most providers publish this information with up-to-date ICB status lists on their websites. 2. Do they offer the assessment you need, ADHD, autism, or both, and for your age group? 3. What is their current estimated waiting time? Right to Choose is faster than the local NHS in many cases, but with growing demand, some Right to Choose providers themselves now have waiting lists of several months to over a year. Compare a few providers before deciding. TUGEN Important 2025-2026 Update. Due to NHS England's new indicative activity plans, some ICBs have introduced funding caps on Right to Choose assessments. This means some providers have had to temporarily pause referrals or place patients on a list with no guaranteed appointment date until further funding is confirmed. This affects some areas more than others. Always check the provider's website for the latest ICB by ICB updates before making your GP appointment. Once you've chosen your provider and confirmed they can accept a referral from your area, note down their name, their website, and their referral process, because you'll need this information at your GP appointment. Most providers also have a pre-written letter template on their website that you can download and bring to your GP. This is enormously helpful, and we'll talk about that in the next section. This is the most important part of the video, so I want to take you through it carefully. The GP appointment is where many people either succeed or get stuck, and the good news is, with the right preparation, this process is very manageable. Step 1. Download the pre-written letter from your chosen provider's website. Almost all Right to Choose providers have a pre-written GP letter template on their website. Some have separate ones for ADHD and autism. This letter explains, in clinical language, exactly what Right to Choose is, why the provider is eligible, and what the GP needs to do to make the referral. It takes the burden off you to explain the system to a GP who may not be familiar with it. Download this letter, print it, and bring multiple copies to your appointment. Step 2. Complete any required screening questionnaires. Many providers ask you to complete a self-report screening form before the referral, For ADHD, this is usually the ASRS, for autism, the AQ10. Some providers put these on their websites as downloadable PDFs. Complete this form honestly and thoroughly, and bring a copy to your GP appointment along with the letter. This shows you've engaged with the process seriously. Step 3. Book a dedicated GP appointment and be upfront about the purpose. When booking, if you're able to, indicate that you want to discuss a mental health referral or a neurodevelopmental assessment. This helps ensure you get an appropriate amount of time. In the appointment, be direct. You can say something like, "I believe I may have ADHD or autism, or both, and I would like to be referred for an assessment. I understand I have the legal right under the NHS Right to Choose Framework to choose my provider, and I'd like to be referred to provider name. I have a letter from the provider here that explains the process." Hand over the letter. Step 5. Ask directly for the right to choose referral. Once your GP agrees the referral is appropriate, clearly request the right to choose pathway. Say, "I would like this referral to go to provider name under the NHS Right to Choose Framework, rather than the local waiting list." Hand over the letter again if needed. The GP can make the referral digitally through the provider's website. Most providers have an online GP referral portal. Before you leave the appointment, confirm that the referral has been sent or will be sent, and get a timeline. Most GPs are supportive of Right to Choose. According to ADHD UK, the vast majority of GPs understand the framework and are willing to make the referral. But occasionally, and it does happen, a GP will push back or decline. Here's what to do. First, understand the difference between a lawful and unlawful refusal. Your GP can legally decline to refer you if they genuinely believe an ADHD or autism assessment is not clinically appropriate for you. That is a legitimate clinical judgment. What a GP cannot do is refuse a right to choose referral solely on the basis of cost, funding concerns, or because they're unfamiliar with the process. If your GP seems unfamiliar with right to choose, stay calm. Hand them the letter from the provider. It's designed to explain the framework in clinical terms. You can also refer them to the NHS Choice Framework, which is the official NHS guidance governing patient choice. Ask if they could take a moment to read the letter and discuss it with you. If your GP declines on non-clinical grounds, ask them to document their reason for refusal in your notes. This is important. You can then request a second opinion from another GP at the same practice. You can contact your local Integrated Care Board, ICB, for guidance. You can contact PALS, the Patient Advice and Liaison Service, at your local NHS Trust, who can help you understand your rights and navigate the process. And if necessary, you can make a formal NHS complaint. This sounds daunting, but it is your right as a patient. If your GP initially refuses, and you think it's a misunderstanding, ADHD UK has a downloadable letter specifically designed for this situation, a Right to Choose explanation letter for GPs. You can download it at adhduk.co.uk and bring it to your next appointment or ask reception to pass it on. If you continue to face barriers, you can contact your MP. ADHD UK provides a template letter for writing to your MP about barriers to Right to Choose access. This level of escalation is rarely needed, but it is a real and legitimate option. One thing to be aware of, even when Right to Choose goes smoothly, the subsequent shared care arrangement, where your GP takes over prescribing ADHD medication after the specialist completes titration, is not guaranteed. Some GP practices have been advised by their local medical committees to decline new shared care agreements for ADHD, citing workload. This is a real limitation of the current system, and it means that for some patients, the specialist provider may need to continue prescribing for longer. It's worth asking your chosen provider and your GP about shared care arrangements before you begin the process. I want to share a few voices from people who've been through this process, because statistics and guidance only go so far. What does it actually feel like? One Reddit user, writing in the radhd.uk community, described the experience this way, and I'm paraphrasing to protect their privacy. "I had been on my local NHS waiting list for 2 years and was told I'd probably wait another 3. My mental health was deteriorating. I came across Right to Choose downloaded the letter from the provider's website, brought it to my GP, and had the referral made in the same appointment. I had my assessment within 5 months. Getting that diagnosis, finally understanding why my brain works the way it does, was genuinely life-changing. Another person, writing on an ADHD support forum, shared, "I'm a single mum, and there was absolutely no way I could afford the £800 to £2,000 that private assessments cost. Right to Choose meant my daughter got her autism assessment within 4 months. We've been able to put support in place at school. I cannot believe more people don't know this exists." So, let's bring this all together into your action plan. Here is exactly what you do after this video ends. 1. Go to audhduck.co.uk/right to choose and read their up-to-date plain English guide. Check what providers are currently accepting referrals. 2. Search your area, ICB Right to Choose ADHD Autism, to check if there are any local restrictions or guidance specific to your region. 3. Choose a provider. Go to their website, download the pre-written GP letter, complete any required screening forms, the ASRS for ADHD or the AQ10 for autism. 4. Book a GP appointment. Be clear when booking that it's regarding a neurodevelopmental referral. Prepare notes about how your symptoms affect your daily life. Bring printed copies of the provider's letter and your completed screening form. 5. In the appointment, ask clearly for a right to choose referral to your chosen provider. Hand over the letter. If your GP is hesitant, stay calm, refer them to the NHS Choice Framework, and if necessary, ask if you can book a follow-up to allow them time to read the documentation. 6. Once referred, follow up with your provider directly to confirm your referral has been received. And from there, you wait, but a much shorter wait than before. You deserve to understand how your mind works. You deserve support. You should not have to pay thousands of pounds or wait a decade for answers that the NHS is legally obligated to provide. Right to Choose exists. Use it. If you found this video helpful, please share it with a friend, a family member, a colleague, anyone who you think might benefit. Drop a comment below with any questions, and I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. And don't forget to check the description for all the links mentioned in this video. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself.